Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of this exercise on wireframes. Part 2 is going to focus more on using the application called Moqups and going through the process, of taking 10-15 minutes to put together a very basic layout. During this process, you'll be seeing a couple of tools and tricks that can be used within the application to keep things moving along and to make your stuff look really nice, clean, and professional. For this, you might want to visit part 1 in the series if you're not familiar with what it is we're doing here with wireframing. And you might also want to create an account in the Moqups application as seen in that video so that you can sign in and start creating right away. Those of you who have seen part 1 have already created your account. The first thing we want to do is when we show up, we want to log in. Now logging in allows us to access our files automatically, and I'm logging in with Google. That's what I signed up with. Fantastic. Now what's great about this is that no matter where you are, as long as you have an internet connection and a browser, basically your work follows you no matter where you go. There's no files to save, there's no work to lose. It's all basically, as they say, in the cloud. Cloud being somewhere on the internet. Now, once you sign in, your workspace returns, and you can start customizing a few things. Now, as we saw earlier, you have your stencils over here, you have some settings that you can change over here for your workspace, general settings, and if you switch over to styles, then you can control the element that you just placed on your screen in a bit more detail. Let's set up our workspace. Set up our workspace first, so page size 1160, that's in pixels of course, and we'll give it a random height of 1800 so that it gives us enough room to add a nice page in there. Now your project might have different specifications. It's important to know those way in advance. If you're designing for 1160 but your project is for 960, you're going to have a very different approach, basically 200 pixels different. Now you can scale it down and use that, but believe me, you're better off knowing what the minimum requirements are for your page width, screen size, whatever. So I'm going to go with 960. Let's go with 960. It'll be fun to work with. And I also want to ask myself, am I using some sort of grid system? And if yes, which one is it? If I'm not, then I could just go ahead and start designing straight out of the box, not worrying about that stuff. But I'm going to pretend that I am working with a grid system. And to do that, I'm going to set up my workspace to accommodate that. Layout grid. I'll just click this box over here on the right, show the layout grid. And as soon as I do that, you'll see these columns appear on my page, which splits it up into different areas. Now, depending on the type of grid you're using, you might want to change the number of columns to 12 or 16 or more or less. I'm going to leave it at 12 and leave these values at the default because I like how they're sized. And it's close enough to our final destination that we don't need to worry about these details at this time. So now we have our 12-column grid. We can't really interact with it. It's just there as a guideline. And it'll match up with our final HTML/CSS workspace once we get to that point. In the meantime, I'm going to start building a little web page. So I want to start gathering all my elements, and as I mentioned before, a couple of schools of thought. One is to just grab a whole bunch of things here from the stencils that you'll be using, so that way you don't have to look for them piecemeal. We have heading, we have a placeholder image, we have some blurb text. We might want to throw a rectangle in there as a basic shape we'll be using with. Maybe a button for whatever occasion. And I can say, okay, well, this one is going to have horizontal navigation. Might as well go to the navigation area down here, grab it and throw it in. So with these basic elements, I'll proceed to put together a very quick and easy layout using this application. Now the first thing I want to do is decide how am I going to set up the header here. I will have my image, Line it up over here. Now you can see as you line things up, you have these pink lines that show up, while you're holding down your mouse button. And much like Illustrator, it's telling you that things are lining up nicely. And you do want that for having that professional look. You want to make sure that the edge of this, the edge of that, all lines up nicely. You don't have things just piecemeal thrown on a page. Yes, it's a quick wireframe, but it doesn't mean it has to be sloppy. Alright, so we'll throw, this is going to be our logo. Here we're going to have our navigation. It's going to go full across there. And here you can, start adding actual values so that it starts resembling your page as much as possible. So my first link is home. You'll notice that for my navigation bar, I just have to add a word or some text followed by a comma, and that tells the application to create a button. And I got here just by double clicking the navigation bar. If I click on games, that's another button. Now this one has an asterisk in front, meaning that it's going to show you an example of an active or hover button. So I'm going to replace all these. So I'll start with home, then I'll go to about us, then I'll say our products, our services, and maybe just contact us for now. I could always change that later on. That's enough. And I want maybe the about us to actually be active as an example. Throw an asterisk in there, and that's it. Now if I click off this element, there it is. It automatically gives us the text that we wrote in there as buttons. And if you need fewer buttons, you could just add more text, etc., or delete. And these buttons are equally spaced out automatically to fit the navigation bar. Other things you can add, let's see what else can we add up here in the header. Sometimes you can add another navigation link. So a link bar like this one over here. We'll say that's going to go here. And this one is going to be admin, or actually let's say login. Link 2 is going to be maybe it'll be my balance, and the third link can be something else like share. I don't know. This is completely random at this point. You can use gibberish text if you want. And you notice my balance had an asterisk on it, so this is what it would look like activated. Next, I want to add a little shopping cart icon. So I'll click on the icons area over here. And here's what's cool is you can choose from different icon libraries. Now these are standard open source, mostly icon libraries that are in the general, you can download them and use them according to their licensing, but they have different styles. So if you want to use, for example, this style of icon, you can switch by clicking the drop down here to a different one. There you go, it loads a different style. So even at this level, even though we're keeping it very high level, you can still at least assign some styling to demonstrate what you're going for. So the font awesome icons are different, as are the and typo icons. It's also useful if you can't find an icon in one of these sets, you could try loading it in another to see if it turns up there. Now I'm looking for a shopping cart icon. I'm not going to go and scroll through these one by one hoping to come across it. I'm just going to see if I type shop, what do I get? Usually these things are tagged properly. So that's the shopping cart icon. Not crazy about it. I'm going to try a different set. Looking for shop. Does that work? Nope. These doesn't have anything. Font awesome will give me another different type of cart. And then there's material design that has a different type of shop icon. I like the little traditional shopping cart, so I'm just going to go with font awesome, select this, and drag it onto my workspace. And from here I can position it where I like. Now again, make sure your stuff is lined up nicely and makes sense. You got your spacing there. Again, you know, resizing stuff, if you're going to use a grid system, might as well take advantage of it so that you know that, okay, that image should line up with these two columns here. Okay, just click one of these corners and drag it to the size you want. So you're respecting these columns. Same here. This is going to be in that column, lined up with that one. Right? So don't go too crazy here. Just, you know, try to get everything down first. Next, we'll tackle the main section of our page. Well, you know what? This is going to be my home page. So what I'm going to do, go to my stencils here again. And is there something for a big carousel image that I want to put in there? Probably not, but what I could do is just put another image placeholder here and just basically say, well, it's going to be about this big. And if you're not into the about this big thing, you know, way of doing business, then you can basically assign accurate values. So on the right hand side over here, when you have an object clicked, you can see its actual size. So in this case, 960 by 398. I'm a big fan of round numbers because it makes life easy. I'll just turn that to 400 and then it scales it accordingly here in my workspace. So there you go. You can use pixel perfect values for sizing things, and you can see immediately what it looks like. You're like, you know what, that's going to take up too much space. I think I'm going to bring it down to maybe 300. Ooh, that might be a little too narrow. I don't know. Let's go with 350. Perfect. Now you'll notice there was an object behind here, right? A couple of objects actually. Well, there are a couple of ways I could do this. I can move this out of the way, then grab these objects and move them down. Or I could just arrange, send this, oops, there it is. Arrange, send this to the back, and it's basically going to send it in the object stack all the way to the back layer. So these items that were behind it are now above. Next, we can add a heading here. We have our little heading box. We can say, okay, well, the maximum size I want my heading to be is about 6, 7 columns here. What did we have? 7. So heading, you might want to insert some text. This is the length of the title up to here. So this is for one line of text. You may want to press, you know, carriage return here, just to see that if you, oh, see what happened there? If you press just enter, it will assign just the text here. Boom, there you go. But if you press shift enter, then you get that second line. So keep that in mind. Shift enter to do a little line break, and then you can add a second line of text for testing. So if you keep adding text, that box will grow. Keep that in mind. So let's bring that back down to size. You can position the container where you like. You can add maybe a second line of text over here. And what you can do is if you double click, you can only, you know, choose the amount you need. You don't have to have the whole paragraph the whole time. For example, if this is a subheading, you can select it, go here on the right, change the size. Okay, maybe something a bit smaller. And bigger. Okay, I could go for that. So this would be your heading, this would be your subheading, and if you need more text, you just grab some from over here. Where is it? Where is it? Lorem ipsum, here we go. And you know, we might have an image over here. Let's grab another image placeholder. And this one is going to be a nice square image, meaning that if we want to make it perfectly square and nice round numbers, we can say 150 by 150, enter, and look at that, we have a nice square image. Now, because we're working on a grid, it might not be perfect. Hold down Shift and just drag it out to the edge, and you'll see that it snaps right when it gets to the edge there, almost. Bang, right there. Again, hold down the space bar, and you get the Mickey Mouse glove, which allows you to move your page around. You can see different parts of it. So add some text. This we don't need, and clean that up a bit. You know, bring in your button, make sure it lines up with everything, and you can double click here and type, you know, for example, read more, ... And if you need to, you know, size it up a little bit, you can do that. There you go. Again, don't worry about colors at this point, whether it's going to be an orange button or a blue button. Who cares at this point? We just want to make sure that it's there so we can see what we're doing. Now let's say that's one story. Let's grab this entire package over here, and then we can group this selection so it becomes one object. And you can just copy and paste this one object here. Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V, and there you go. You have basically an example of what you expect your heading area to be like. Now you can focus here on the right. You can say, okay, well, this is going to be a placeholder for my sidebar. And this is going to be a banner ad, for example. Again, it doesn't have to be pixel perfect at this point. It's nice to get it to work that way, but sometimes, there you go, you gotta tweak and nudge things to get them to work right. You know, so that could be a banner ad. You might also have a calendar of events over here that people can use to book. You might have, you know, a small tabbed area here with multiple options for people to play with. And where's our box? Right here at the top. Say, okay, this is going to be our little tabbed area. You could add form elements over here, so you can have, okay, this is going to be our newsletter. See, when I'm moving it, I'll zoom in a bit. As I'm moving it left and right, I'm getting my pink indicator letting me know whether I'm centered or not. So this allows me for much more accurate placement. And again, copy, paste. If I double click, I can edit the text here. So, you know, I can say something like enter name. And, you know, enter email. Wonderful. Now I can just copy and paste an element, and you see this grouped object I have here. If I click it, everything's been fused together in the group, but if I double click it, it kind of opens up the group to me to grab an element from within it. So double click, control copy, control paste. Ooh, that's not what I wanted, because now I pasted it back in the group. So undo, undo, double click, I can copy. Now I can unclick this group, and if I click paste, it pastes it as a standalone object. There you go. So there's my button for that. And you could double click and say sign up. Yes, sir. Why not? And you would go basically, you know, as you approach the bottom, you can say, okay, well, this rectangle here is going to be where my footer is. That's my footer area right there. And you can format it using any one of these tools over here on the right. You can change the color. You can make it light gray just to distinguish it. You can turn off the line if you prefer. So 0. Rounded corners in this case, not too useful, so we'll just leave that out. But basically, if you click here, and you'll see the rounded corners option is available. right? So you have that button with rounded corners. If you want to have, one of those pill boxes, pill shaped, you just increase this size. And what I'm doing now is I'm pressing the up button on my keyboard to raise these values up and down. So it gives me a bit more control. And at some point it maxes out. So if I choose 20 pixels here, the radius just maxes out. If I resize this container, though, you can see where, I could keep raising this radius to get back to that pill-shaped object. Here, I can use other elements to, let's say, set up my footer. I can say, okay, here's a Google map for me. I'm going to add some, maybe a little vertical navigation bar. All right, so let's move this over here. And I'm going to add a vertical menu there. Shrink that down a bit to fit within the two columns and line things up. And again, this could be a submenu that reflects the top menu over here. If you prefer, you can just add words, so you can just turn off the outlines, and you can even turn off the background color and the fill. Oops, solid none. There you go. And if you prefer, in the text, you can even underline it to, indicate links. And really, that's about to it. At this point, you have a pretty good idea of what your page will look like. If you feel like, you know what, I could probably, I'm going to zoom out a bit here using the keyboard, Control minus, and zoom in, Control plus, or I can use the tool over here. I mean, here it allows you to make decisions like, well, you know what, I'll probably move this and line it up over there because I want a bigger gap between the sidebar and my content. Or, you could maybe split the difference so that when you're building your page, it's not, you can play around with these margins later. So that's about it. I mean, again, there's nothing to save here. It's all already there in my page 1. I can double click here to rename it, call this home. And what's cool is now I can duplicate this, and we'll call this content. And I can get rid of the stuff that I won't be needing. For example, we don't need a carousel. We'll keep that there. We'll get rid of these other 2 teaser stories because now we're going to focus on just one. We can move all this up. Just click and drag and move it upwards, say there. So that's going to be our story here. Line it up till there. And what we can do is get rid of this read more button, and you can even ungroup this now. Let's right click and ungroup. We'll leave the image in there, remove the read more, and now this blurb text, what we can do is just copy and paste, line it up there and there, and we just copy paste all the way down to show how long we expect these text articles to be, and if there's going to be any other images in them. See how I did that? I clicked on the Alt key on my keyboard or the Option key on your Mac. You just click and drag and it makes a copy. How cool is that? A lot of these shortcuts match up with Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop, so they should become familiar. So here, hold down my Alt key or Option key, click and drag, and drop it in. Now again, the purpose of this is to create a very quick, rapid prototype so you can visualize what it is you need to do next. What would happen here next is I'd hand these over to a graphic designer, or I'd basically, meet with my client and say, okay, here's what the plan is. How do you feel about it? Is there anything missing from this? Are all the requirements accounted for based on these wireframes? Once I get the approval, yes, then I would probably take these, go to a graphic designer, sit down with them and say, okay, here's the basic layout we want. It has to match exactly, which means don't come back to me with a mock-up with a logo on the right-hand side or new elements that weren't in the wireframe. Reproduce this exactly. And what you want to come back with that exercise is basically from here, I'm going to jump down now to some high-fidelity mock-ups, to here. So the graphic designer knows exactly what needs to get done. Here's the logo, navigation, but now we have color, we have images, we have typography. It's a more refined look, which again allows us to make different types of decisions, cosmetic ones primarily, but we know that everything we need is here. We don't have to, there's no guesswork. Did we forget anything? Because redoing this stuff takes long, and that's what you want to avoid. So, you don't want to spend time and money, usually they're both one and the same, redoing stuff that's really labor intensive. In the process, what would happen is, once these are approved, the high fidelity mockups, you'd grab these and hand them over to your development team, and they would study these and basically reproduce this in web format. So they take these graphics and build the navigation bar and place all these containers in HTML and CSS. So that's basically how the workflow works. These days, things are a bit different. You might have prototyping in between. You might have the web developers involved earlier in the process so they can help with some of the features. But in general, this would be, these would be the steps usually followed in the process. They're designed to minimize unexpected surprises and unwanted labor and changes when you're further deep into the project, where small changes can equal many hours or even many days or weeks of extra work because of bad planning. I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys see the value of creating wireframes and how investing a little time up front will save you a lot of time when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of coding and designing. Feel free to shoot me an email if there's any questions, anything I didn't cover, some stuff you're having problems with the application called Moqups. Just let me know and we'll address it. Thanks a lot. Tune back in.